Hey, is this thing on? Are we recording? Can I get a tech person? Oh, for the love of EdTech. Hey, Kara.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited that we are going to talk to Lori Lee today, who is the Assistant Director at INFOhio.
Right. And for those of you that don't know, INFOhio is Ohio's pre-K through 12 digital library, and it has some amazing resources for really anybody that lives in Ohio. I mean, I wanted to say students and teachers, but there's great stuff for parents and kids that are in preschool too.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what she has to say because she's our people.
Yes, we love talking to librarians.
Joining us today is Lori Lee, who is Assistant Director of INFOhio. So hi, Lori. Welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about like the evolution of the library and some of the great things that INFOhio is doing. Okay, so as the Assistant Director of INFOhio, I know that it's a recent shift for you. So what led you to INFOhio?
Good question. So prior to coming to INFOhio, I was a high school English teacher, and then I was the district librarian at Zanesville City Schools for 27 years. So I had a lot of classroom experience, but during that time, I think my path to the library is kind of interesting because then that feeds into my path to INFOhio. So 18 years of experience or so, I became very interested in Google. And it was kind of that evolution of the time where Google was really being poured out into the schools. And in fact, I think I went to the very first Ohio Goes Google Summit that Ohio had.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so I came back on fire for Google, and I was trying to use it with our students. Our school then went Google, but nobody knew what that meant. It just looked like our email was different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So, and then shortly after that, SOTA actually put on their Google boot camp to become a certified Google trainer. And I, at that time, was working really closely with our district librarian, and we had a pretty good partnership. And she was actually the person who encouraged me to apply.
Oh, nice.
So the district decided to invest in it, sent me to SOTA for that week, took all the tests, and then came back and applied for the rest of the certification, did my video and so on and so forth. So became a Google certified trainer in 2012. So it was one of the very first cohorts for Ohio.
Yeah, like our first or second one, right? Because I've been a trainer since 2011 and I was doing some of those camps.
Yeah.
Were you still an English teacher at that time?
I was still an English teacher at that time. And then after I received that Google certification, the librarian was getting ready to retire. And the principal at the time said, you know, I really want you to become the school librarian. And I was like, what? No, really? And I said, I am not, I had this very traditional view of what a school librarian was and did. And as I did some more research, the district also said, and we want you to become certified. And so I had just finished my master's plus 45 hours, and we were not interested in paying any more money to become, to do more schooling.
Right.
So, but I decided to jump in and actually found a program where I could become certified online, take coursework online. And I was actually then placed in the library. So I was doing the next school year, I was doing the coursework and doing the job of a school librarian. And
which is kind of cool because you're like living it as you're learning it.
Yes. And I was so thrilled because what I learned is my view of a school librarian was totally different than what I was learning about. I had a real passion for it. I realized that the school librarian was really a leader in curriculum, which is one of my passions, a leader with integration of technology. So then you become this technology coach on top of supporting literacy. Obviously, as an English teacher, I was very passionate about literacy, passionate about inquiry. Our school was also going through a project-based learning initiative, and so I was taking the lead on that work. So all of those things, that different initiatives that schools have in place, your school librarian could probably take the lead and support any of that work and having those relationships with teachers on top
So
of it.
you mean to tell me that school librarians don't just check out books?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so then my path, then I became very connected with INFOhio as a school librarian. I wanted to use their resources. I had been using them as a teacher, but I decided to become trained as an iCoach because I knew that I could then learn how to integrate those resources and use them and train teachers and students how to use those resources. Became involved with the Meta, the ITC, and became closely connected with the people who were helping me learn how to be a school librarian with the software. And so became part of the Users Council for representing Meta with INFOhio. So I had that experience. And then in 2020, the director, Terry Frederica, was retiring, and they posted the director's position. And so I had people encouraging me, my building principal then at the time, and other people saying, you should go for it. You should apply for that. And obviously I'm not the director, but what was really nice is that through that interview process and through the sharing of that, they decided to create an assistant director position. And so happy to be working with Erica Clay, because I had known her as she was an instructional specialist. And then when she became the director in 2020, then in June of 2020, I moved to the assistant director position. And of course, all during the pandemic.
Yeah, of course. Great timing.
So it was bittersweet to leave the district and to leave the classroom and the library, but this was such a wonderful turn of events and allows me to now have a bigger vision of education in Ohio. So working with Ohio Department of Education, working with the ESCs, working with EdTechs. So all of that is just, I think it's taken the skill set, my years of experience, and allowed me to really have a bigger impact on what's happening across the state.
Yeah. And something I want to mention and go back to, I guess, a little bit for people that don't really understand how libraries work. When you were mentioning Meta and working with the ITCs, I think people, and I'll just have you touch on it really quickly, don't realize that all of those records for anything that is going to be checked out of the library has to be put into the computer system. So just for those that aren't familiar, because Corinne and I are, just because of having experience working in libraries, but can you speak about how that, all the kind of behind the scenes things about a library that a lot of people might not realize that school librarians are doing?
Yeah, sure.
Just touch on some of those.
So, one of the 4 services that INFOhio has is the library services platform. So that's really, we say that INFOhio has basically 3 departments, so to speak. We have the instructional department, which is what I oversee and manage. And then we have our central, which is basically operations. And then we have our technical. And the majority of the technical responsibilities are managing the library software. And so if schools work through their ITC and they automate their school library with the ITC, they're receiving software called Circe Dynex. And Circe Dynex is the library platform that you learn as a librarian, and your vendors that you order books from can upload those MARC records for all the books, and those come through either your ITC or through INFOhio. And then you also then are cataloging. That's another thing you learn to do, and you learn to bring books into the platform. And then a lot of times what I was using Meta for was also helping me to understand how to run reports. So looking for how many books are checked out, and then also how many kids have lost books, where books are, where they aren't,
how old they are, they haven't been checked out since the 2001.
Which the other big thing that was always a heavy lift was doing the inventory, because a librarian is really responsible for, being responsible for those funds. I mean, you're using, you've used funds to purchase those books. And it also could be, a lot of schools are now using that Circe Dynex to catalog their Chromebook or any of their assets that they have, their College Credit Plus textbooks that they might have. So a lot of anything that you would keep track of in a school, you could actually use the system to catalog them, and keep track of them. So.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's really important just because there is so much behind the scenes happening. And two, I mean, you also have to keep your collections relevant. So, otherwise we would still have books from when our parents were there.
Right.
Another heavy lift that I did that Meta helped me with was actually genreifying the library. So putting the books into the different genres so that students would be more likely to go and check a book out because they could actually go to the fantasy section and find a book that they were interested in. And so they helped me to actually undertake that process because you're changing the call numbers on a book, but they had a very simple process to go through. And other than just the work of moving the books and scanning them and getting them in. But that was an exciting change that a lot of people are embracing with school libraries.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, encouraging a love of reading in kids is so much more than being like, hey, here's a book. I mean, we do that, right? We get to know the kids and we get to know their interests and form relationships with them so that we can guide them toward things. But I mean, like you're saying, the organization of the library contributes to that. Making sure your catalog is current, like Kara was talking about, contributes to that. There's so much more to it than checking books in and out.
And then even now, I know another big thing is making sure your collection is representing all populations.
Right.
How diverse is your collection? And can a student in your building see themselves in the books that are on the shelf? So also, I think beyond even just the books, thinking about, having a relevant website, that was something I spent a lot of time. I was really passionate about having a website that students could easily use, teachers could easily use, being able to highlight the resources that whether they were from INFOhio or if they were something I paid for, that was always important too, and having access to me. So if they needed to schedule time to come into the physical library or just to have office hours, having a really relevant and easy to use website was important too.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a perfect segue because I was going to ask you about how you think technology has affected the libraries. So I know, there has been some move to, in some places, to do away with, books in general, but what effect have you seen with technology in the library?
And technology for libraries, and depending upon your leadership, I think too, is understanding, I think at the time that they were thinking about the transition from the librarian retiring to transitioning to me, I think it took a lot of guts for that principal to say, we want to replace this person. We want you to we want to keep the library. We want to have a person in there that's certified, that knows the job. But he also knew my additional talents. My additional passion was technology. So that in itself, I think what I've always told librarians that feel like their jobs are in jeopardy is to make sure you're listening to the priorities of your district. And you need to fit you to the priorities of the district.
Right.
And I think the pandemic facilitated a lot of the change that I was trying to make in the district with technology, and it made it go so much faster. Like they were forced to do it. And so I think technology can add additional responsibilities to a school librarian, but I think that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And I always said there were so many things that a librarian can do and has the ability to do, and you probably don't do them all really well. There's probably a little niche that you have. And I always said, and I'm going to say it out loud.
Do it.
The books were not my first priority, but it did allow me to build bridges with certain students because I knew that was their passion and it was what they were interested in. And a lot of times I would allow students to become the leaders in that. So have students write book reviews, have students do book trailers. Why do I have to do all that? I didn't need to do all that. So it was a career change that took me down a path that I would have never dreamt when I entered education 29 years ago. So would have never dreamt that I would have been a school librarian. So
it's so funny because that's like a theme.
Yes.
Funny.
And I should mention too, really quickly, just that INFOhio is Ohio's K-12 digital library.
Yep, INFOhio is Ohio's pre-K through 12 digital library. And we license and purchase content that normally schools would have to purchase on their own. But because we pool our resources with Libraries Connect Ohio is one of the places where we pool resources from. We've also done the Remote edX initiative during the pandemic where we received funds from them. And so we are able to pay for those resources. And then anybody in Ohio can go to our website and for free access to those resources.
And that was something else I was going to ask you about. If you're outside of Ohio, do you have access to anything?
You can access the blog posts that we have.
Okay.
So basically what you would see if you went to the website is you would see a red button in the upper left corner that says you're not logged in. And so there are places that they can poke around and see things, but they wouldn't be able to access the paid resources that are there.
Okay.
And what's really nice in the last probably 5 years is that we've really worked on the website so that people don't necessarily have to know their username and password. It's done through IP authentication and geo authentication. So it's noticing that you're in Ohio and you're able then to be automatically logged in. So
logged in.
Wonderful.
Yeah, because I know that used to be kind of a big hiccup is like you wanted kids to use it when they got home or something. And then they were like, but I lost that paper you gave me that had the username and password.
Yeah. And now you can, and there's kind of, even if you're not logged in, you click the button and then it allows you to kind of look up your username and password. And
Password.
I'm glad you brought that up though, Kara, because we talk about INFOhio a lot with teachers and we're using those words, teachers and students, but it's also for home use. And it's got so much great stuff for parents to use or students to use on their own, and all of the early learning stuff for your kiddos that maybe are in preschool. It's got so much great content.
We are excited about it.
So speaking to INFOhio and some of the things that it offers and the platform itself, because I feel like it's shifted in the technology piece.
Been some major changes in the past, I'm going to say the past decade, but really the past 5 years. And I don't know if you encounter this, but there's so much good stuff on there that I find myself bringing it up randomly. Like, well, there's this really great tool. And there's so many people that don't know what INFOhio is or haven't used it since it was mostly databases and are surprised at what they find.
You're so right. It is still amazing to me that I run across people all the time in the state that don't know. And I say that, I often say in our work, I feel like sometimes we have to break our bubble because we often are talking to the same people all of the time.
And you were like, everyone knows all about this.
Right.
But they don't. They don't.
I really think one of the things that has really grown probably in the last 6 years is the professional development aspect for INFOhio. So our learning pathways that we have available are really taking off. And especially when the pandemic hit, you had a lot of people that needed to learn how to use resources. So typically what we try to do is we have pathways and we call them classes within the pathway. And those pathways, or those classes are really centered around a resource. So for instance, we have BookFlix. BookFlix is probably our most popular,
my favorite,
our most popular
favorite
resource. And so we have a class on BookFlix, and it's not a traditional online class in the sense that you have to complete something and you have to register your amount of time. It really is, I kind of call it almost like a textbook for BookFlix. So you could pick and choose what you want to learn about BookFlix, or you can actually go through the entire thing. Then there's a quiz at the end, and then you get a certificate. So it's meant to be very self-paced and self-directed learning, but our team is small at INFOhio. We have 6 instructional specialists and myself, and it's not like we can go around the state and be everywhere when somebody needs professional development. So this was the answer to that. Well, those classes were kind of the answer to, okay, how can we get professional development out around and get people to understand what is in INFOhio as far as resources go. So yeah, it continues to grow. So we're really excited about that part of it.
Okay. So what would be your best advice when it comes to technology implementation, a tip or trick that you tell every teacher that they should be doing, anything?
Well, and I'm gonna wrap in a couple of INFOhio resources as I answer this.
Yes, do.
So I really think something that all educators can benefit from is building that community of practice. And when you think about librarians, a lot of times we're the only ones in a building. You're the only ones in a district. So actually learning from other librarians across the state is really important. But just any community of practice. I mean, if you're an English teacher, if you're, a math teacher, just having other like-minded people to talk to. And so INFOhio actually has a platform where those types of discussions and communities can grow. And it might not be one you're familiar with, and it's called Open Space. And open spaces are open access microsite. It's actually built on OER Commons. And within open space, there are things called groups. So this is one of the few resources where you do create an account for open space. But once you create that account, you can see there's groups, and there's different groups that you can join. And within those groups, there's discussion boards. You can create folders for resources, so you could share resources with that group. Groups can be private, groups can be open. Prior to leaving Zanesville, we actually created a Zanesville English department group. So nice. We wanted to be able to share resources. So lesson plans and things we were doing, we wanted to be able to kind of develop our own curriculum and be able to share those resources. So Open Space gave us that place to do that. Anybody can create a group, but you can also join a group. The other resource that I think is really important for teachers to know about, because it's a new resource, and you can kind of marry these two together, is the EBSCO ebook collection, and it's the professional collection. And these are ebooks that are unlimited access ebooks. And they're all professional, around different professional topics that teachers could, thinking about like a book study. So if your school or department or librarians across the state, if you wanted to, find a book in the ebook collection, all of you can download that ebook. You could read the ebook together. Now join an open space group and now have a conversation about the ebook and share ideas and create those things that way. So I just think those two resources in themselves, what a great way also for a librarian to lead by creating a book study around one of those professional collections for her district, or even, for districts or for librarians across the state too.
I like that. All right. So for any of our Ohio educators, how can they find you?
So you can find INFOhio by just typing in www.INFOhio. So INFOhio.org. So then you go there, and then we also have a great support. So you can always contact us at support.infohio.org, and somebody will help you out if you're looking for something. So,
which is great. How have you seen teachers kind of partner with the librarian to incorporate you and the resources into the classroom? Because really, librarians are not there to just, like we said before, check out books. I mean, they're there for so much more. And why not partner with someone so that you're not carrying all of the weight yourself if there's something that you want to try?
Yeah.
So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, great question. And I think inquiry, research, you could incorporate your school librarian anytime that you are asking teachers to, or asking students to perform any type of inquiry. So inquiry doesn't necessarily just have to be a research paper. I also think about like building background knowledge. So in science and social studies, especially, when students need to understand a topic before they can really study the topic, your librarian can help build that background knowledge. Way back in the day, they used to call them web quests.
Yes, I remember web quests. That was big when I was getting my certification.
Yeah. So you could build, but your school librarian, can bring in all of the different resources and put them into. I'm a big HyperDoc gal, and I love HyperDocs. So I always encourage the teachers to use me as the person to help build that HyperDoc. And so we would partner, using a hyperdoc, and they could come up with some of the learning activities. But I was the person tasked with finding the videos and finding the articles and the websites and even the books if students needed the hardbound books. So hyperdocs tend to be a lot more digital. But one of my favorite INFOhio resources is Points of View Reference Center. And Points of View Reference Center gives you topics, and you're allowed to see both sides of the topic. So there's 3 articles with every topic. So you have a overview article, and then you have a point of view article, and then you have the counterpoint article. So the other reason why, as a school librarian, that I loved showing that resource to students and teachers is because it also listed all these topics. And so when you're talking about argumentative or persuasive writing or speech giving, a lot of times students just don't know what they don't know. So by giving them the Points of View Reference Center and allowing them to explore all of the different topics that are there in the different categories, they were then able to then really almost have like a passion project. So they were able to find what they were really passionate about and then be able to speak on it on both sides. And what is so important nowadays, of course, is being able to see things from all different sides.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And critical analysis, right?
Yes.
So important.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I say this all the time, but I feel like I would have never survived college had it not been for my elementary librarian, because she really taught us how to find scholarly articles using databases, all of those things. And I think now, because kids are online all the time, you just automatically assume that they have those skills to search in appropriate ways, but usually, I mean, my experience with my kids in the library was always like, they just put in the question or whatever into Google, and the first thing that comes up is what they go with.
First answer.
There's no, yeah. And I mean, and when you're trying, if you're on track to go to college and you need to do research, and if you're doing research in high school, et cetera, being able to find credible information is important.
Yes, absolutely.
And those skills aren't developed unless they're taught.
Right.
And
a lot
you just can't make the assumption.
And a lot of classroom teachers, I mean, that wasn't in their skill set. So when a school says they don't have a school librarian, you're like, well, who's teaching inquiry? Who's teaching searching skills, digital citizenship?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who do you have doing that? Because I can guarantee you your classroom teachers, 1, don't need another thing on their plate. And 2, probably have not been trained in that formally.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So could you share with us and our listeners some resources that libraries offer that people may not know about? And it doesn't have to be just school libraries. It can be just libraries in general, because a lot of people don't realize how many resources are available to them for free.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people don't know, and some of your school libraries might have these, but you can have access to music a lot of times, download music. Another big one, because a lot of libraries now don't invest in magazines, but you can still access those magazines online also.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. And then, the maker movement is very big in libraries, and school libraries could do this. And I do believe some school libraries do it, but I know a lot of the public libraries are doing where you can check out a sewing machine. You can check out a Cricut. You can, they have things where you can have access to them where you normally wouldn't want to buy them, to see if you have a passion around doing something like that. But I think that is a great way to be able to see what you would be interested in. I think about it the same way as books. You go to a library because you don't really want to purchase the book, but you'd like to learn more information about it, and you'd like more information about a certain topic. So that's what your library is there for. While they're doing that, again, with, maker type of devices, obviously, public libraries, you have your movies that you could get on DVDs if you needed those types of things. And then I know during the pandemic, a big thing for us was hotspots. The school library was checking out hotspots to kids way back in the day. And it's probably not as relevant today, but, like flash drives, those types of things, we would let kids check those out as they needed them. So you could put kits together. There's different ways that school libraries can put together kits for around a certain craft. We would put together like a bookmark kit And so kids, if they needed, or greeting card kit. So if they needed to make greeting cards and you need a card for your mom's birthday or Mother's Day, we did a couple Mother's Day type of things where we put the kit together and then they can just take it and be able to make that. So take it and make it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think too, don't some libraries also offer access to coursework? For free? Mm-hmm. You can take classes. Like I know I've signed up for like a health and nutrition thing just because I was interested and I wanted to know if it, was a path, and you can take coursework for free.
Even like taking a yoga class for free at the library. So having access to that also.
Yeah. So if you haven't, check out your local libraries, get a library card, even if you're not in a school library.
And I bet, I know that there are several libraries that do genealogy too. They have a whole genealogy department.
Oh yeah, that's true. Very cool. Yes. I think people don't realize, even though we live in this digital world now, they think of the library, they think of brick and mortar, but I check out library books all the time. I couldn't tell you the last time I've been in the public library. You can still use those resources.
Well, and it's good for teachers too, because I know that like if I didn't have a book I wanted to read aloud to kids in the school library, I could always get on the app on my phone and see if the public library had it, download it, and still, you're reading it on a tablet as opposed to a physical book, but still you had access to the resource. So
well, and I don't know if this is true everywhere, but I know here in Dayton where we are, teachers, if you don't know this, you can check out more books than the average person from the public libraries. So sometimes teachers have a higher book limit.
That is a true statement. And sometimes you get longer time period on movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good to know. See? There's your library hack for you right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lori. It was so great to have you.
Thank you. This was fun.
And it was a great conversation about libraries and the importance of them and how they've evolved. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our discussion today. If you like our podcast, please don't forget to subscribe to get notified when new episodes are released.
For more information about our podcast and to access links and resources referenced in this episode, check us out at fortheloveofedtech.org.